For 5 years, she lived drugged and poisoned by the man who hated her, unable to remember who she truly was. Until one day, she found the courage to run, riding for days until her body could no longer endure it. On the other side of the kingdom, the Alpha King, blind for 5 years due to an inexplicable curse, trained relentlessly, so no one would ever see his weakness. But in one miscalculated move, he fell to the ground, and it was in that exact moment that destiny struck hard. She appeared out of nowhere, fainted, and tumbled off her horse right on top of him. And the second their bodies touched, the impossible happened. He saw a flash of light for the first time since losing his sight. The pain always came with the full moon. Rosalie woke with her hands pressed to her chest, trying to contain the feeling that something inside her wanted to tear through her skin from within. Cold sweat slid down her temples as she bit her lower lip until she tasted iron. She couldn't scream. Victor didn't tolerate weakness. She slowly sat up on the narrow bed, the rough sheets clinging to her body, and looked through the cracked window of the cabin. The moon hung in the sky like a silver eye, watching, judging. Always the moon. Always that inexplicable agony that left her trembling and breathless, as if her own body were a prison she could never escape. "Get up." Victor's voice cut through the silence like a blade. He stood leaning against the door frame, arms crossed, his face marked by scars he never explained. "It's time." Rosalie didn't need to ask what for. Every day, the same routine. He brought the bitter liquid in a tin mug, watched her drink every drop, and left without another word. She used to ask what it was, why she had to drink it, why it burned all the way from her throat to her stomach. But questions only ever brought silence, or worse, that cold stare that made her feel even smaller than she already did. "It's to keep you alive," he had said once, years ago, when she was 17, and naive enough to believe there might be some hidden kindness in him. Stop complaining and drink. Now, at 22, Rosalie no longer asked anything. She just obeyed. She rose, her bare feet touching the cold wooden floor, and walked to the table where the mug waited. The sour smell hit her before she even picked it up, making her stomach twist. But she drank. She always drank. The taste scorched her throat, slid down like liquid fire, and she had to grip the table to keep from vomiting. Victor watched with dead eyes, as if checking off a completed task and nothing more. "Good," he said, taking the empty mug back. "There's firewood to gather. And the roof is leaking again. Fix it before dark." Rosalie nodded, her head still spinning, her body heavy as if she had woken from a terrible dream. But it wasn't a dream. This was her life. This isolated cabin surrounded by trees that felt like they closed in tighter every day. This man who treated her like property, something he needed to keep functioning but never truly alive. This suffocating routine that made her forget sometimes that anything existed beyond those rotting wooden walls. She remembered nothing before 17. It was as though her life began the moment she woke in that cabin for the first time. Victor staring at her exactly the same way he stared now. As if she were a problem he didn't want but was forced to handle. "Who am I?" she had asked that first day, her voice trembling, fear making her hands shake. "Why am I here?" "You're nobody," Victor had replied without even looking at her. "And you're here because I let you be." 5 years. 5 years since that day, and Rosalie still had no answers. Only doubts growing like weeds inside her chest, choking out any hope that somewhere, somehow, there might be more than this. More than surviving in silence, swallowing questions that would never be answered. She put on her worn dress, tied her black hair into a messy braid, and stepped out into the cutting cold of morning. The forest was too quiet. It always was. As if even the birds were afraid to make noise near that cabin. Rosalie grabbed the axe leaning against the house and walked to the woodpile. Each strike against the logs reverberated through her bones, but she kept going. because stopping meant thinking. And thinking meant remembering the pain from the night before, the feeling that something inside her was dying slowly, day after day. The day passed in its numbing routine. Firewood, water from the well, patching the roof with the same old boards that never held for long, preparing the meager food Victor brought. And through it all, that persistent sensation that she was forgetting something important, something vital. At night, when Victor returned, he carried the smell of alcohol with him. Rosalie was sitting near the weak fireplace, mending her dress when he stumbled in. He dropped a sack on the floor with a heavy thud. "Food," he muttered, his voice thick. "Make it last." She nodded without looking up, but something about him was different tonight. Tense. And frightened. Victor poured himself more to drink, his movements clumsy. Then he began talking to himself, low, as if he'd forgotten she was there. "Can't go on like this. It's not safe." Rosalie lifted her gaze, watching him. 5 years keeping that damn girl alive. When will they notice? Her heart raced. "Victor," she said, her voice firmer than she felt. "Who are you talking about?" He froze, the bottle halfway to his mouth. Then he turned to her slowly, his red-rimmed eyes struggling to focus. "You don't ask questions. I have a right to know." The words escaped before she could stop them, laced with a courage she didn't know she had. "Why do you keep me here? Who am I? Why?" His hand struck her face, hard enough to whip her head to the side. Rosalie gasped, the taste of blood flooding her mouth, tears springing instantly to her eyes. "You don't have any rights." Victor loomed over her now, a finger pointed in her face, eyes wild with rage and alcohol. "You're alive because I let you be. You eat because I allow it. Understand?" Rosalie pressed her hand to her burning cheek, tears running freely now. But for the first time, the emotion inside her wasn't only pain. It was anger. Deep, visceral anger, burning hotter than any blow. "I can't take this anymore," she whispered, her voice shaking but resolute. "Whatever you're hiding from me, I will find out. And when I do..." Victor lunged, grabbing her by the throat and slamming her against the wall. Rosalie fought, her nails digging into his arms, but he was stronger. He always had been. "You won't find out anything," he growled, his face so close she could see the pulsing veins on his forehead. "Because you're not leaving. Ever." He shoved her away, and Rosalie collapsed on the floor, coughing, clutching her throat. Victor staggered backward a few steps, rubbing his face. "I need air," he muttered to himself. Then he looked at her, exhausted. "Tomorrow you'll drink your medicine and you'll be quiet, like always." He walked out, leaving the door ajar. Rosalie stayed there, kneeling, her heart pounding violently. She could hear him outside, stumbling, talking to himself again. "The Queen will kill me if I fail. Shouldn't have agreed to this. 5 years is too long. If she remembers who she is." "Queen," he said, "Queen. And if she remembers who she is." A chill seeped through Rosalie's veins. She had been someone, before all this, before Victor, before the cabin, before the forgetting. And someone, a queen, wanted her to stay forgotten. Minutes passed. Victor's muttering faded into heavy snores. He had passed out. Rosalie slowly stood, her legs trembling. She approached the door and peeked outside. Victor lay sprawled beside the dead fire, an empty bottle rolled near his hand. Completely unconscious. The door was open. It was now or never. She ran back inside, grabbed the thickest cloak she owned, and wrapped a few pieces of hard bread in a cloth. Her hands shook so much she almost dropped everything. Victor's horse was tied near the cabin. An old, ill-tempered animal. But it was her only chance. Rosalie untied him with trembling fingers, whispering silent apologies as she climbed onto his back. She didn't know where to go. She had no map, no plan. Nothing except the instinct screaming in her mind. Run. So she ran. The horse pushed through the forest in a rough gallop, branches scratching her face and arms, the cold cutting through her thin dress. Rosalie held on tightly, tears burning her eyes. From fear or relief, she couldn't tell. She rode for hours, maybe days. Time lost meaning, measured only by hooves striking the ground and the ache in her muscles. She stopped only when absolutely necessary, drinking from icy streams, eating berries she prayed weren't poisonous. The moon followed her as if guiding her somewhere. On the third day, the horse stumbled. Rosalie didn't see the twisted root crossing the path. The animal lurched violently, and then she was falling, the world spinning in a blur of green and brown before she struck something solid. Not the ground. Hands. Hands that caught her with steady strength, keeping her from hitting the earth. Rosalie lifted her gaze, dizzy, her whole body aching. And she found herself staring at the most beautiful face she had ever seen. No, not just beautiful. Unsettling in its perfection. A sharp jaw, defined lips, dark hair falling in unruly waves past broad shoulders. But it was his eyes that stole her breath. Gray, empty, fixed on a point beyond her. He was blind. And yet the way he held her, as if he knew exactly where every inch of her body was, as if he could see her more clearly than anyone with sight, sent her heartbeat into chaos for reasons she didn't understand. "Who are you?" His voice was deep, rough, and carried a command that made even the wind hesitate. Rosalie tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. She tried to pull away, but his arms didn't give. They weren't aggressive, just steady. As if she were something precious he refused to drop. "She fell out of nowhere, Your Majesty," a male voice said nearby. Rosalie turned her head and saw a tall man in polished armor, watching the scene with a mix of surprise and caution. She came out of the forest riding like she was fleeing hell itself. "Your Majesty." The title echoed in Rosalie's mind like a distant bell. "She's injured," the king said. Not a question. His fingers brushed her cheek lightly, touching the exact spot where Victor had struck her. She shivered, not from pain, but from something entirely different. Something that set her whole body alight in a way she had never felt before. "We'll take her to the palace." "Your Majesty, we don't know who she is," the warrior protested. "She could be dangerous." "I said," the king cut in, his voice dropping to a tone that allowed no argument. "We'll take her to the palace." And then it happened. The king drew in a deep breath, as if testing the air. His entire body went rigid. His arms tightened around Rosalie, not painfully, but with need, as if letting her go would physically hurt him. Rosalie stared, confused, as his expression changed. His lips parted slightly, his breathing grew heavier. And then he did something completely unexpected. He pressed his face into her neck. Rosalie froze, every muscle locking. She should push him away. Scream. Do anything besides stand there, paralyzed, as he inhaled her scent like it was the most important thing in the world. "Who are you?" he murmured against her skin, his voice so low she barely heard it. Before Rosalie could make sense of anything, darkness pulled her under, and she collapsed in his arms, unconscious. Rosalie woke without knowing where she was. The ceiling above her was far too high. The bed was far too soft. The silence was far too clean. No Victor snoring, no creak of rotten wood, no moldy smell clinging to her throat. She sat up abruptly, heart racing, and then the pain came. Not the familiar ache the moon brought, but something different. Muscles she hadn't even known she had hurt. Scratches burned. Her face throbbed where Victor had hit her days ago. Days. How many days? The memory returned in violent flashes. The escape, the endless forest, the horse stumbling, the fall, and then hands. Those steady hands that kept her from shattering against the ground. And that face, those gray eyes that saw nothing, and yet somehow had seen everything in her. The door opened. Rosalie shrank back on instinct, clutching the sheets to her body as a useless shield. But it was only a woman. Older, kind-faced, carrying a tray that smelled like real food. "Ah, thank the gods you're awake." The woman smiled, setting the tray on a nearby table. "I was starting to worry. 3 days is a long time." 3 days. Rosalie tried to get up, but the world spun. "Slowly, dear." The woman helped her sit, propping pillows behind her back. "You rode yourself nearly to death according to the trackers. You need to recover." "Where am I?" Rosalie's voice came out hoarse, scraping in her throat. "In the central palace of Thornhaven, seat of Sovereign King Aspen, ruler of all the wolf realms." The woman picked up a mug from the tray and offered it. "Broth. It will help." Rosalie didn't take it. She didn't trust it. Wolf realms, Rosalie thought, not understanding what that was supposed to mean. Why did they bring me here? Because the king ordered it. The woman set the mug within her reach. "My name is Martha. I look after the rooms in this wing. And you are—" Rosalie didn't answer. Martha didn't seem offended. She just nodded, as if she understood. "When you're ready, the king would like to see you. But there's no rush. Eat. Rest. You're safe here." Safe. The word sounded so strange that Rosalie almost laughed. When Beatrice left, Rosalie just stared at the tray. Fresh bread. Fruits she had never seen before. Meat that smelled of spices. Her stomach growled, betraying her. She picked up the bread and sniffed it. Nothing odd. She bit into it. Flavor exploded on her tongue. Butter, salt, something sweet. She ate like a starving animal, not caring about crumbs or dignity. In another part of the palace, Aspen stood in his private chambers, hands braced on the cold stone of the window, face turned toward a sun he hadn't seen in 5 years. The blindness had come without warning. One night, he slept as always. The next morning, the world was nothing but darkness. He had consulted every elder, every healer, every wise person he could find. Most had no answers. But one, the oldest, the wisest, had said something Aspen never forgot. "This is not an illness, Your Majesty. It is a curse. Someone ripped something from you. And until you discover what it was, you will remain in the dark." 5 years. 5 years of training his body to compensate, sharpening senses other wolves didn't even know they had, becoming even more feared precisely because no one understood how a blind king could be so lethal. But there was one thing no training could cure: the emptiness. Aspen felt as though a part of him had been torn out that night, as if there were a hole in his chest that nothing, no victory, no conquest, no woman, could fill. Until 3 days ago. He could still smell her. Sweet, with a wild edge, like flowers growing out of scorched earth. And when he held her, gods, when he held her, his wolf had roared in a way that defied explanation. Mine. The word had come from somewhere deep, primal. A recognition that made no logical sense. But she was human, frightened, hurt. And Aspen didn't understand what that meant. He only knew that the idea of letting her go, of allowing her to walk away, made his chest tighten with something close to physical pain. Your Majesty. Gideon, his most loyal warrior, entered without knocking. He was one of the few permitted to do that. She's awake. Aspen felt something clench inside him. He didn't show it. And she's scared, suspicious. Martha said she barely speaks. Gideon paused. "What do you intend to do with her?" "I don't know yet. People are talking, especially Lady Beatrice and Queen Cassandra. They arrived yesterday for the final wedding preparations, and they are not pleased with the situation." Aspen knew that situation very well. Cassandra, queen consort of the Kingdom of Dawnfell, one of the realms under his rule, had been pushing for that alliance for months. She had offered her daughter, Beatrice, as his future wife, and Aspen had accepted because it made political sense, not because he felt anything, even though Lady Beatrice was very kind and gentle with people, and the king respected that in her. Rosalie was exploring the room, testing the door, unlocked, checking the window, far too high, searching for exits, when Martha returned. "The king is waiting for you." Rosalie didn't want to go. Every instinct screamed at her to stay where she was, to lock the door, to hide until everyone forgot she existed. But Martha was already holding out clean clothes. A dark blue dress, simple but infinitely better than the rags she had worn for years. "Put this on," Martha said gently. "Don't take too long. The king is not a man who waits." Rosalie dressed in silence, fingers trembling on the ties of the dress. When she finished, she followed Martha through endless corridors. She tried to memorize every door, every turn. Martha stopped before a dark wooden door and knocked. "Come in." That voice. Rosalie felt something run down her spine. Not just fear, but something more unsettling. Something that made her whole body wake up in a way she didn't understand. The door opened. The room was large. A crackling fireplace, shelves full of books, maps spread across a heavy table. And near the window, with his back to them, stood the man himself, Sovereign King Aspen. Even without seeing his face, Rosalie felt the weight of his presence. The way he filled the space, not with arrogance, but with something deeper. Authority that came from the bone, not from a crown. "You may leave us, Martha." The maid curtsied and slipped out, closing the door behind her with a soft click that sounded to Rosalie like it was sealing her fate. Silence stretched. Rosalie stood near the door, fists clenched, ready to run if she had to. "You're afraid of me." He still hadn't turned. "I can feel it." Rosalie didn't answer. What could she say? That yes, she was afraid? Aspen turned slowly, and Rosalie had to fight the urge to step back. He was even more striking than the last time she'd seen him. Tall, built like a warrior who had spent years on the battlefield. Broad shoulders under a black tunic, a sharply cut jaw. Dark hair falling to his shoulders in a way that should have looked careless, but somehow just made him more handsome. And those eyes. Empty, and yet somehow fixed exactly where she stood. "Come closer," he said. It wasn't a request, but it wasn't the brutal command Victor used either. It was something in between, something that made her body want to obey, even while her mind screamed danger. Rosalie stepped forward. She stopped while there was still a safe distance between them. Closer. Why? The word slipped out before she could stop it. Something changed in his expression. Not quite a smile. Maybe curiosity. "Because I cannot see you. And I need to know how you ended up inside my lands." Rosalie hesitated. But she took a few more steps. Now she was close enough to feel the heat coming off him, to catch that scent of leather and something woody that made her head spin. Aspen raised his hand slowly. Rosalie tensed, bracing for a hit. But he only touched her face. Fingers brushing the cheek still swollen where Victor had struck her, sliding along her jawline, pushing aside a strand of hair that had fallen across her eyes. The touch was exploratory, gentle in a way that made her chest ache more than any act of violence. "Who did this?" His voice came out lower, thick with something that sounded like contained rage. "No one important. Don't lie." His fingers trailed down to her neck, barely grazing her skin. Rosalie held her breath. There are other marks. Old ones. You've been hurt many times. For a very long time. How did he know? How could he sense things she could barely see in the mirror? What does it matter? Rosalie stepped away from his touch, because if she kept letting him touch her like that, she'd do something foolish, like trust him. I can't stay here. I don't know what you want from me, but neither do I. The honesty in his answer caught her off guard. Aspen lowered his hand, but his empty eyes stayed fixed on her. When I held you in that forest, something in me reacted. My wolf recognized you in a way I cannot explain. Wolf. The word made something strange stir in her chest. A vibration. A recognition of her own. I don't know what you're talking about. I know you don't. He tilted his head, as if listening to something beyond her words. But you will. Because something tells me you're more than you appear to be. More than even you know. Rosalie wanted to laugh. Or cry. Or both. I'm no one. Just a girl Victor kept locked away. I have no memories, no past. No, Victor. The way he said the name sounded lethal. That's what he's called? The man who hurt you? Rosalie didn't answer. She shouldn't have said his name. Where are you from? Aspen pressed. Which realm? Which village? I don't know. I don't remember anything before I was 17. It's like my life started in his cabin. The words came out bitter. And he never told me. Never said where I came from. He just gave me that liquid every day and... She stopped. Too late. Liquid? Aspen's eyes narrowed. What kind of liquid? Bitter. It burned going down. He said it was to keep me alive. Rosalie wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. But I always felt sick afterward, weak, like something inside me was being smothered. The silence that followed was heavy. Rosalie couldn't understand how she had managed to trust him enough to share her life so quickly. Aspen turned sharply, striding to the table where the maps lay scattered. His hands pressed into the wood hard enough to make his knuckles pale. How long ago did you run? His voice was almost too controlled. 3 days, maybe 4, I lost track. And this liquid. Have you drunk it since then? No. Rosalie frowned. Why does that matter? Aspen didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke again, there was something different in his tone. Something that sounded like hope. Because it might explain many things. Before Rosalie could ask what he meant, the door opened. A man walked in, the same warrior from the forest. Tall, a scar cutting across his face, armor gleaming. His gaze swept over Rosalie with caution, before returning to the king. Your Majesty, Lady Beatrice and Queen Cassandra are waiting for you in the hall. The final preparations need to be discussed. Aspen's shoulders tightened. Tell them I'll be there soon, Gideon. They insisted it be now. Gideon hesitated. And they mentioned they would like to meet. The guest you brought from the forest. The air grew heavier. Then let them meet her. Aspen turned to Rosalie, and there was something protective in the way he positioned himself. But make it clear, Gideon. She is my guest, under my protection. Any disrespect to her will be treated as disrespect to me. Gideon nodded and left. Rosalie looked at Aspen, confused. Why are you doing this? Aspen was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was more controlled, more distant. Because my instinct tells me you're in danger, and I don't ignore my instincts. It wasn't the answer she had expected. It was practical, almost cold. Instinct, Rosalie repeated, not sure whether she felt relieved or disappointed. You appeared in my forest running from something, hurt, frightened. Aspen folded his arms, his posture turning even more rigid. And there's something about you that doesn't add up. That liquid they gave you, your erased memories, all of it points to something bigger. So that was it. Curiosity. Maybe even political strategy. Nothing personal. Why did that bother her? I can't stay here, Rosalie said, more to herself than to him. I have nothing to offer. I'm just someone who needs answers. Aspen cut in. And I have the means to help you find them. Stay until you do. Then you decide what you want to do. It was logical. Practical. No empty promises or pretty words. Rosalie wanted to refuse. She wanted to cling to what little pride she had left. But the truth was, she had nowhere to go. Victor could be looking for her. And alone in the forest, she wouldn't last a week. How long? She asked. As long as you need. 1 week, Rosalie corrected, firm. After that, I'm leaving. Aspen didn't seem pleased with that answer, but he nodded. 1 week then. And he turned away, ending the conversation. Rosalie stayed where she was, feeling something strange tighten in her chest. It wasn't gratitude. It was something more confusing, as if some part of her had wanted him to say something else, anything else. But he didn't. The great hall was intimidating in a way Rosalie had not expected. Martha had brought her there after helping her change, into something slightly more formal, but still simple. Rosalie followed the maid through the corridors, acutely aware of every curious look from the servants who passed. When the double doors of the hall opened, Rosalie had to fight the urge to step back. The space was vast, a high ceiling supported by dark stone columns, rich tapestries covering the walls, and in the center, a long table where several people were already seated. Rosalie recognized Aspen immediately. He sat at the head of the table, posture straight, expression neutral. But his head turned slightly when she entered, as if he could sense her presence even from a distance. Beside him sat a woman, beautiful in a way that felt carefully constructed, blonde hair braided in an elaborate style, a gentle smile as she spoke with Aspen, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Rosalie felt something strange tighten in her chest. That is Lady Beatrice Thornwell, Martha whispered at her side. Daughter of Queen Cassandra, the king's future wife. Wife. The word echoed in Rosalie's mind in a disturbing way. Of course. Of course he had a fiancé. Martha guided her to a seat halfway down the table. Not close to the head, but not relegated to the far end either. A neutral place. Safe. Rosalie sat, keeping her hands in her lap, trying to make herself invisible. But then another woman entered. Older than Beatrice, but still beautiful. Dark hair pinned into an intricate bun, crimson dress, a delicate crown on her head, and eyes that swept the hall with the confidence of someone used to being obeyed. Queen Cassandra. She walked gracefully to her chair beside Beatrice, offering polite smiles to those present. But when her eyes passed over Rosalie, the world stopped. Cassandra froze, only for a fraction of a second, but Rosalie saw everything. She saw the shock tear through that composed mask, saw those eyes widen, saw the color drain completely from her face. And then, as quickly as it came, the reaction was gone. The mask slipped back into place. Perfect. Impenetrable. But Rosalie had felt it. That recognition, that barely disguised terror. She knows me. The thought came from somewhere deep, instinctive. This woman knew who she was, and she was terrified to see her there. Cassandra sat down slowly, her hands smoothing her dress with movements that tried to appear casual, but were far too stiff. Beatrice leaned toward her, whispering something Rosalie could not hear. The queen replied with something, but her eyes returned to Rosalie. And there was calculation there. Assessment, as if she were trying to decide what to do. Dinner began. Dishes were served, meats, vegetables, breads. Rosalie tried to eat, but every bite seemed to turn to ash in her mouth, because she could feel Cassandra's eyes on her, constantly, and Aspen. Aspen seemed to feel the tension too. His jaw was tight, his fingers drumming lightly on the table. Beatrice spoke animatedly at his side, but he barely seemed to hear her. A servant approached Rosalie, holding a pitcher. "Wine, my lady?" Rosalie was about to refuse when she noticed something odd. The servant had not offered wine to anyone else around her, only to her. And when she looked more closely, she saw how his fingers trembled, how he avoided her gaze, staring at a point somewhere past her shoulder. "No, thank you." "I insist." He was already filling her goblet. "It is a special vintage. Queen Cassandra requested it be served to the guests." "The Queen." Rosalie looked at Cassandra. The woman was not staring directly at her, but there was tension in her posture, a sense of expectation. Rosalie lifted the goblet, pretending to bring it to her lips. The liquid brushed her mouth, but she did not swallow. She only wet her lips, keeping the goblet raised as if savoring the wine slowly. Her eyes met Cassandra's across the table. The Queen was watching, waiting. There was expectation in her gaze, a tightness that made the air feel heavy. Rosalie lowered the goblet, pretending to appreciate the taste. And then, as if by accident, she let it slip slightly from her fingers. The wine spilled across the table, staining the pale tablecloth. "Oh." She stood quickly, making a great fuss. "I'm so sorry, Servants rushed to clean up. Martha appeared with cloths, making soothing gestures. And in the middle of the chaos, Rosalie saw it. Cassandra's face. The mask slipping for just a heartbeat. It was not irritation over the spilled wine. It was frustration, and Rosalie knew there had been something in that wine. Rosalie could not sleep. Lying in the bed that was far too soft, staring at the ceiling that was far too ornate, her mind spun in endless circles. Why did the Queen recognize me? What was in that wine? And then the connection hit her like lightning. Victor. His drunken words, muttered outside the cabin. "The Queen will kill me if..." The Queen. Cassandra. It was the same person. It had to be. Rosalie sat up abruptly, her heart racing. Victor worked for Cassandra. He had kept her locked up, doped with that horrible liquid on her orders. Rosalie could not shake that thought from her mind. But why? Who was she? That a queen would care? That she would arrange to keep her imprisoned for 5 years? That she would try to poison her the moment she saw her in the palace? The questions piled up, each more terrifying than the last, suffocating her in that large room that suddenly felt far too small. Rosalie got up, pulling on a robe Martha had left, and walked to the door. The guards were talking quietly on the other side, but they did not sound particularly alert. She opened the door slowly. "My lady?" One of them turned. "I cannot sleep," Rosalie said, her voice coming out calmer than she felt. "I need some air. I'm going to walk in the gardens." The guards exchanged a look. "We should escort you." "No." The word came out firmer. "I need to be alone, please." There was something in her tone, perhaps desperation, perhaps a quiet authority she had not known she possessed, that made them hesitate, and then nod. Rosalie walked barefoot through the silent corridors, following her instincts until she found a door that led outside. The palace's inner garden was vast, surrounded by high walls, filled with ancient trees and flowers that gleamed silver under the moonlight. The moon. Rosalie looked up, feeling that familiar pull, that ache in her chest that always came, but now felt different. Less like pain, more alive, as if something inside her were finally breathing after years of being smothered. She walked to a stone bench near a fountain and sat, wrapping her arms around her knees. "I am losing my mind," she thought. "I must be. Queens do not conspire against insignificant girls. Kings do not rescue strangers from the forest. None of this makes sense. You should be asleep." Rosalie jumped, spinning around. Aspen stood a few paces away, appearing out of nowhere like a shadow. He wore only a simple tunic, his hair loose, his feet bare. "I could say the same to you," Rosalie replied, her heart still pounding from the fright. "I do not sleep much." He walked to the bench but did not sit. He simply stood there, far too close for comfort. "The darkness does not change whether my eyes are open or closed." There was something painful in those words, something that made Rosalie's chest tighten. "I did not mean, do not apologize." Aspen tilted his head, as if listening to something beyond her voice. "You are frightened. I can feel it." "I am not," Rosalie lied. "Your heart is beating too fast. Your breathing is uneven." He took a step closer. "And you smell of fear." How did he do that? How did he know so much just by sensing? Aspen stayed silent for a moment, then asked, "Tonight at dinner, you were frightened. Of what?" Rosalie hesitated. She could not simply say, "I think the Queen tried to poison me." He would think she was insane, paranoid. Or worse, that she was trying to stir trouble between him and his future mother-in-law. "Nothing specific," she said at last. "Just too many people. Too many eyes. I spent 5 years seeing only one person. This is a lot." It was not a complete lie, but it was not the whole truth either. Aspen did not sound convinced. "You spilled the wine." Rosalie felt her blood run cold. He had noticed. Of course he had. It was an accident. Was it? He took another step, now close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Because it seemed very deliberate." Rosalie swallowed hard. "Why does it matter?" "Because you are not good at lying." Aspen tilted his head. "Your heart speeds up when you lie. Your breathing changes. And right now you are terrified that I will find out what you are hiding. Damn it. How could he read her so easily? I am not hiding anything. Rosalie." The way he said her name, low, almost intimate, made something in her chest twist. "If something frightened you at that dinner, I need to know. You are under my protection, and I cannot protect you if I do not know from what." Rosalie wanted to tell him. She wanted to say everything. About the servant, about the wine, about the way Cassandra had watched her. But what if he did not believe her? What if he thought she was trying to sabotage his marriage? "It is just hard to trust," she said finally, her voice coming out weaker. "I spent years learning that trusting people only leads to pain." Aspen was quiet for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he stepped back. He put a bit of distance between them. "I understand," he said, his voice softer now. "But when you are ready to trust, I will be here." They fell silent for a while, simply existing in the same space. Rosalie watched the moon. They stayed in silence for some time, just sharing the same air. Rosalie watched the moon. Aspen watched. What? She did not know. Perhaps he was only listening, sensing. "May I ask you a question?" Rosalie said at last. "You may." She hesitated, then settled on the question that had truly haunted her since she first saw him. "How did you go blind?" Aspen did not seem surprised by the question. He only tilted his head slightly, as if deciding how much to reveal. "It happened 5 years ago," he said, his voice too neutral. "One night I went to sleep seeing. The next morning, the world was darkness." Rosalie's chest tightened. "No warning? No pain?" "Nothing. Just emptiness." He paused. "I consulted every healer, every wise man. Most had no answers, but one elder said it was not an illness." "Then what?" "A curse." The word came out heavy. "He said someone took something from me, and that until I discovered what it was, I would remain in the dark." Rosalie turned that over in her mind. A curse. Someone had done this to him, on purpose. And you accepted it? Aspen let out a sound that almost resembled a laugh, but without any humor. I had no choice. I cannot undo what I do not understand. He turned his face toward her. But I learned to live with it, to become stronger because of it, to make sure no one sees weakness where there is only limitation. There was pride in those words, but also pain, an old, deep pain that he hid well. You do not seem weak, Rosalie said softly. You seem terrifying, actually. This time he really smiled. A small smile, but genuine. Terrifying. You move as if you can see, as if you know exactly where everything is. It is unsettling. Unsettling, he repeated, as if tasting the word. No one has ever called me that before. What do they call you then? Fearsome, relentless. Some say monstrous. He shrugged. But never unsettling. Rosalie did not know why, but that made her smile too. Well, you are. Unsettling and impressive. Aspen was quiet for a moment, then so softly she almost missed it. Thank you. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was simply there. Shared. It was Rosalie who finally stood. I should go back, she said, her voice more shaky than she would have liked. Aspen nodded, rising as well. I will escort you. You do not need. I will escort you, he repeated, in a tone that allowed no argument. They walked in silence through the gardens, back toward the palace. Rosalie was acutely aware of every inch of distance between them, of how easy it would be to just reach out, touch him. But she did not. When they reached the door that led into the inner corridors, Rosalie turned to thank him, and tripped. Her bare foot caught on the hem of her robe, and she lost her balance completely. She pitched forward, bracing herself for the sharp impact with the stone floor. But arms caught her, strong, steady, wrapping around her before she could fall. Rosalie gasped, her hands instinctively clutching at his tunic for balance, and suddenly she was pressed against his chest, could feel the heat radiating from his body, his heartbeat racing just as fast as hers. Aspen did not let her go. His arms stayed around her, holding her to him in a way that was not only about keeping her from falling. It was something else. Something deeper. More necessary. You need to be more careful, he murmured, his voice rough, his lips so close to her forehead she could feel his breath against her skin. Rosalie lifted her gaze, and the world stopped. They were so close. She could see every detail of his face. The strong line of his jaw, his parted lips, the small scars marking his skin. And those eyes. Even without sight, they seemed to look straight through her. Aspen's hand slid up, his fingers brushing her cheek, pushing aside a strand of hair that had fallen over her eyes, drifting down along her jawline, stilling at the base of her neck, where her pulse hammered wildly. Your heart, he whispered, his thumb pressing lightly there, is racing again. Rosalie could not breathe, could not think. All that existed was his warmth, his scent, the impossible nearness that made every cell in her body scream for something she did not understand but desperately wanted. Aspen leaned in, just a fraction, then another. And Rosalie knew with absolute certainty, that if she did not step away now, something would change irreversibly. With the last drop of willpower she had, she pressed her hand against his chest. No, she whispered, her voice breaking. I cannot. Aspen closed his eyes, his jaw clenching hard, but he did not come any closer. After a moment that felt like an eternity, he stepped back, let his arms fall away, took one step away from her. You are right, he said, his voice painfully controlled. painful, and too calm. Rosalie felt her knees go weak, her whole body trembling with something she could not name. But she forced herself to step back. Then another step. "Good night, Your Majesty," she managed. And then she ran. She ran through the corridors, past the startled guards, and locked herself in her room. Only when the door was closed and bolted did she allow herself to collapse. She pressed her back to the wood and slid down until she was sitting on the floor, her heart still hammering, her body still burning everywhere he had touched. What was happening to her? Why did her body react like that? Why did his mere nearness make everything inside her want to surrender? Rosalie wrapped her arms around her knees, looking out at the moon shining in the sky. And for the first time in her life, she felt something other than pain when she looked at it. She felt awakening. Rosalie woke with her body on fire. It was not a fever. It was not an illness. It was something else, a heat rising from inside, pulsing beneath her skin like live embers. She sat up abruptly in bed, gasping for air, her hands pressed over her chest where that strange sensation always lived. But today it was worse. Much worse. Morning light filtered through the window and she blinked, trying to focus. But everything looked far too intense. Colors were sharper. Every carved detail in the wooden furniture jumped out at her with such clarity it made her dizzy. And the sounds. Gods, the sounds. She could hear everything. The rustle of leaves in the garden 3 floors below. Footsteps echoing in distant corridors. Whispered conversations she should never have been able to catch. It was as if the entire world had decided to shout in her ears at once. Rosalie pressed her hands to her temples, pushing hard. "I'm losing my mind. That's it. I've finally gone mad." Rosalie got out of bed, her legs trembling. The knock on the door made her jump. "Lady Rosalie?" Martha's voice. "I brought your breakfast." Rosalie opened the door, and the smell of food hit her with enough force to make her stomach twist. Not from hunger, from overload. As if every scent had been amplified 100-fold. "You're pale, dear." Martha stepped inside, setting the tray down on the table. "Did you sleep badly?" "I did not sleep much," Rosalie admitted. It was not a lie. Martha studied her with those gentle eyes that always seemed to see too much. "There is a meeting in the smaller hall in a few hours. The king requested your presence." Rosalie's heart lurched. "Why?" "I do not know, but Lady Beatrice and Queen Cassandra will also be there." Martha straightened the pillows on the bed for no real reason. "Wear something appropriate, and try to eat, even if it's just a little." When Martha left, Rosalie looked at the tray. Fruit, bread, cheese. Everything smelled so strong it was almost painful. She forced herself to eat a few slices of apple. Each bite exploded on her tongue with flavors she had never noticed before. Far too sweet. Far too tart. Far too intense. What was happening to her? The smaller hall was intimidating in a different way from the great hall. More intimate. More claustrophobic. A round table surrounded by red velvet chairs, tall windows letting in far too much light. Rosalie walked in and immediately felt the weight of several gazes on her. Aspen sat at the head of the table, posture straight, expression neutral. But when she entered, his head turned slightly. Just a barely noticeable movement. But she saw it. And he felt her. She knew he did. To his right, Beatrice smiled. A perfect, practiced smile that never reached her eyes. She wore an ivory dress that made her look like a bride rehearsing for the big day. Cassandra sat beside her daughter, and when her eyes met Rosalie's, the cordial mask cracked for just a second. Long enough for Rosalie to see the cold calculation behind it. "Rosalie." Aspen's voice sliced through the silence. "Sit." There was an empty chair at his left, directly across from Beatrice. Rosalie walked toward it, hyper-aware of every sound her steps made on the marble floor, When she sat, she realized how close she was to him. Far too close. She could feel the heat radiating from his body. Catch that scent she now recognized instantly. And he was tense. She could see it in the way his fingers gripped the arm of his chair, in the rigid line of his shoulders. "Thank you for coming," Beatrice said, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. "We wanted to get to know you better. After all, you are the king's special guest." The emphasis on guest did not go unnoticed. "Lady Beatrice is right," Cassandra added, smiling in a way that was nowhere near genuine. "It is so rare for the king to bring strangers into the palace. You must be very special." Rosalie did not answer. She simply kept her hands in her lap, trying to appear smaller than she was. "So, Rosalie," Beatrice went on, leaning forward slightly. "Tell us about yourself, your family, where you come from." It was a trap, far too obvious. "There is not much to tell," Rosalie said, keeping her voice steady. "I do not remember my family. I do not know where I came from." "How convenient." Beatrice exchanged a look with her mother. "Lost memories. Mysterious past. Sounds like something out of a bard's tale, don't you think?" "Beatrice." Aspen's voice was quiet, but laced with warning. "Forgive me, my king." Beatrice laid her hand over his on the table, a possessive gesture disguised as affection. "I am only curious about our guest." Rosalie watched that hand on his, and felt something hot and violent erupt in her chest. Something that wanted to rip those fingers away. That wanted to... She blinked, stunned by her own reaction. "What is happening to me?" "Rosalie will stay with us for as long as she needs," Aspen said, pulling his hand out from under Beatrice's with a movement that was casual but deliberate. The silence that followed was thick with tension. "Of course," Cassandra said at last, her voice far too controlled. "Hospitality is a royal virtue, after all." She stood, smoothing her skirts. "If you will excuse us, Your Majesty, my daughter and I have preparations to oversee." Aspen nodded, and the two women left. But before crossing the doorway, Beatrice looked back, and the smile she gave Rosalie was pure venom. Rosalie did not wait to be dismissed. She stood as soon as Cassandra and Beatrice were gone, ready to flee that suffocating room. "Rosalie." Aspen's voice stopped her. She froze, but did not turn. "Look at me." She turned slowly. Aspen was standing now just a few steps away, those sightless eyes fixed exactly where she stood. "You are different," he said. It was not a question. It was a statement. "I do not know what you are talking about. Your heart is beating faster, and you smell..." He paused, drawing in a deep breath. "Different. Stronger." Rosalie felt her blood run cold. "I am only tired," she lied. Aspen took a step toward her. Then another. Now he was far too close, invading her space, making that heat in her chest flare even more. "Do not lie to me," he said quietly. "Not when I can feel every change in you." "Then what do you want me to say?" The words came out sharper than she intended. "That I do not know what is happening to me? That I am hearing things I should not be able to hear? Feeling things that make no sense? That my body is changing in ways that terrify me?" She was breathless now, her fear and frustration spilling over. Aspen did not back away. He simply raised his hand and touched her face gently. "Then let me help," he said. "Let me understand what is happening to you." Rosalie wanted that. Oh, how she wanted that. But how could she trust him when everything around her felt like a web of schemes? "I cannot," she whispered, stepping out of his reach before she did something foolish, like throw herself into his arms and never leave. And then she ran. Again, always running from him. In another part of the palace, in a private chamber far from prying ears, Cassandra paced back and forth like a caged animal. "She is changing," the queen said, her voice tight. Did you see how she looked at you when you touched the king? She almost growled. Beatrice sat in an armchair, her fingers drumming on the armrest. The wolf's bane is leaving her system. It is only a matter of time before the wolf wakes completely. And when it does, she will remember. Cassandra stopped, turning to face her daughter. She will remember who she is, who her father was, and everything we did. Then we cannot wait. Beatrice stood, her spine straight, her posture resolute. The wedding is in 4 days, but we cannot risk her surviving until then. What are you suggesting? Beatrice walked to the window, looking out over the gardens below. An accident, during tomorrow's hunt. The king always participates, even blind. He trusts his senses, Gideon's protection. She turned, and her eyes were utterly cold. But accidents happen in forests, stray arrows, attacks by wild animals. Cassandra was silent, thinking it through. And if Aspen suspects? He will not. Beatrice smiled. Because I will be devastated, shocked, and I will comfort him in his grief for the poor girl he tried to save but could not. The queen studied her daughter for a long moment. Then she nodded. Do what needs to be done, but be discreet. If there is any suspicion pointing to us, there will not be. Beatrice was already heading for the door. By tomorrow night, Rosalie will be nothing more than a sad memory, and nothing will stand between me and the crown. The night had fallen heavy over the palace. Rosalie was in her chambers, but she couldn't stay still. The heat in her body had grown throughout the day, pulsing beneath her skin like something alive trying to break free. She walked to the window and looked outside. The moon. It was bigger tonight, brighter, and looking at it made something inside Rosalie burn even hotter. She needed air. She needed space. She needed anything that wasn't this room that suddenly felt far too small. Rosalie slipped on her robe, stepped past the guards with some vague excuse, and headed toward the garden. The night air should have cooled her, but it didn't. It only made the heat intensify, as if the moon itself were pulling something out of her. She walked to the fountain, trying to breathe, trying to calm herself. And then she felt it. It wasn't sound. It wasn't movement. It was presence. Rosalie turned. Aspen stood near the trees, the moonlight carving shadows across his face. He wore only a simple tunic, his hair loose, and he looked less like a king and more like a predator. You can't sleep either, she said, her voice coming out hoarse. No. He walked toward her, each step measured. Not when I can feel you. Not when I know you're hurting and won't let me help. Rosalie wanted to laugh, or cry, or both. How do you even know I'm hurting? Because I feel the same thing. Aspen stopped just inches from her. Since you arrived, something in me has been waking up, and I don't know what to do with it. The air between them was charged, heavy, thick with something neither had the courage to name. You're going to marry her, Rosalie said, though the words came out weak. In 4 days. I know. Then why are you here? Why do you keep... She didn't finish, because Aspen took one more step, erasing the last bit of distance, and cupped her face in his hands. Because I can't stay away from you, he said, voice rough, desperate. Because everything in me is screaming that you're mine, and I don't know how to fight that. Rosalie should step back. She should be rational. She should remember he belonged to someone else. But all she managed to do was lift her eyes to his and whisper, "Then don't fight it." That was all Aspen needed. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't soft. It was desperate, ravenous, as if 5 years of emptiness had finally found relief. His lips claimed hers with an urgency that knocked the breath from her lungs, and Rosalie melted into him, her fingers curling into his tunic, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened. Aspen's hand slid to the back of her neck, tilting her head for better access, and Rosalie let out a soft, helpless sound against his mouth. Lost, completely lost. It was fire. It was inevitable. It was right in a way nothing in her life had ever been. Aspen guided her back against a nearby tree, his body pressed to hers, and Rosalie could feel his heart pounding as wildly as her own, could feel his heat, his need. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. Aspen rested his forehead against hers, eyes closed, breathing hard. "I shouldn't have done that," he said, though he didn't sound even remotely sorry. "No," Rosalie agreed, her fingers still gripping his tunic. "You shouldn't, but I'm going to do it again." He opened his eyes, sightless, yet full of emotion. "And again, until you tell me to stop." Rosalie should tell him, right now, before it was too late. But instead, she pulled him into another kiss. And this time, when the moon shone down on them, Rosalie felt something inside her respond. Not with pain, with something deeper, truer. As if every cell in her body were singing a song she didn't know she knew. Aspen felt it too. He pulled back slightly, breathing hard, his fingers tangled in her hair. "Did you feel that?" he asked, voice rough, urgent. "Feel what?" Rosalie could barely think, much less form coherent words. "That." He pressed her hand to his chest, where his heart was racing uncontrollably. The connection. Rosalie could feel it. It wasn't just his heartbeat. It was something else. Like an invisible thread tying them together, pulling, binding them in a way that defied logic. "I don't understand," she whispered. Aspen let out a shaky breath, resting his forehead against hers. "I don't know how much you understand about our world, about what we are, but you..." He paused, searching for the right words. "You are definitely a wolf, and you're waking up." Wolf. The word echoed through her mind. Victor had spoken about wolves, about them getting closer, and that massive wolf she had seen near the cabin. "My wolf recognizes you," Aspen went on, voice low, intense. "From the very first moment. He knows something my mind took days to accept." "What does he know?" Aspen lifted his hand, tracing her jawline with a reverence that made Rosalie's heart stutter. "That you are mine." The words should have frightened her, should have made her step away. But instead, they only made the heat in her chest intensify, that strange sense of belonging swell inside her. "But you're going to marry," Rosalie said, reality hitting like cold water. "In 3 days." "No." The word came out firm, final. "I'm not." Rosalie blinked, confused. "What?" "I can't." Aspen held her face with both hands, forcing her to look at him. "Not after this. Not after finally understanding what has been missing all these years. But the alliance, the kingdom, Queen Cassandra. To hell with alliances." There was something fierce in his voice now, something that brooked no argument. "To hell with politics. I spent 5 years blind, Rosalie. 5 years feeling like part of me had been torn away. And then you appear, and for the first time since that cursed morning, I feel whole." Tears stung Rosalie's eyes. "But how? How will you cancel it? They will... I don't know." Aspen let out a humorless laugh. "I have no idea how I'm going to do this. I only know I can't stay away from you. That everything in me is screaming you're the one I'm meant to claim. Not her." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, then her eyelids, then the tip of her nose. "Tomorrow," he murmured against her skin. "I'll find a way. I'll speak to the council, to Cassandra. No matter the political fallout, no matter the consequences. He pulled back just enough to look at her. "Do you trust me?" Rosalie did not trust easily. 5 years with Victor had stripped that instinct clean out of her. But when she looked at his face, at those eyes that could not see, yet somehow saw her more clearly than anyone, something inside her broke open. "Yes," she whispered. "I trust you." Aspen pulled her into another kiss, this one softer, more promise than passion. Rosalie woke with her heart still racing. Morning light poured softly and golden through the window, but all she could feel was the ghost of his touch. Aspen's lips on hers, his hands on her face. The rough promise murmured against her skin. "Tomorrow I'll find a way." Today was tomorrow. She got out of bed, her body still humming with that strange energy that would not stop growing. The sounds of the palace were far too sharp. Conversations in distant corridors, the clink of armor, even the rustle of leaves in the garden 3 floors below. And the smells. Gods. She could pick out every single scent. Aspen was awake. Somewhere in the palace, he had not slept either. The knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Lady Rosalie?" Martha came in with a tray. "The king has called an urgent meeting, full council, and he requested your presence." Rosalie's stomach twisted. "When?" "In 1 hour." Martha began sorting through clothes. "Wear something formal. It seems it will be important." The throne room was imposing in a suffocating way, a soaring ceiling held up by black stone columns. Aspen's throne, massive, carved from dark wood, dominated the far end of the hall, and around it, council members were already gathered, murmuring among themselves. Rosalie walked in and felt every gaze swing toward her. She moved to a discreet corner, trying not to draw attention. But then the doors opened again. Cassandra and Beatrice entered. The queen wore blood red, a delicate crown gleaming in her dark hair. Beatrice was flawless in emerald green, her face a perfect mask of composure. But Rosalie saw it, saw the tension in Cassandra's shoulders, the way Beatrice's fingers dug into her skirts. They knew something was wrong. His Majesty, the High King Aspen. Everyone rose. Aspen entered with Gideon at his side. He wore formal attire, a black tunic embroidered in silver, the heavy chain of office resting on his shoulders. And even without sight, he walked with absolute authority to the throne. He sat. The hall fell silent. "I called you all here," Aspen began, his voice echoing off the stone walls, "to make an announcement." A pause. "There will be no wedding." The room exploded. Counselors stared at one another in shock. Nobles whispered furiously. And Cassandra? Cassandra went utterly still, all color draining from her face. "Your Majesty," one of the elder counselors rose, "this is highly irregular. The alliance with Dawnfell will remain," Aspen cut in. "Dawnfell will stay under my sovereignty. We will remain allies. But there will be no marriage to Lady Beatrice." Beatrice stepped forward, her voice trembling just slightly. "But my king, the preparations, the guests, everything is... It will be cancelled." Aspen did not waver. "My decision is final." "With all due respect, Your Majesty," Cassandra said, her voice far too controlled. "A decision of this magnitude demands an explanation. What has changed?" Aspen did not answer immediately. He only turned his face slightly toward Rosalie. And even though he could not see, she felt the weight of that look. "I discovered," he said at last, "that there are things more important than political alliances." The silence that followed was absolute. Cassandra looked at Rosalie, and in that moment, Rosalie saw everything. The hatred, the panic, the realization that she was losing control. "If there is nothing else," Aspen said, rising, "this meeting is adjourned." Counselors began to file out, still muttering. Nobles exchanged bewildered glances. But Cassandra and Beatrice remained where they were, watching as Aspen left through the side door. And when they looked at Rosalie again, there were no masks left, only murderous fury. An accident, you said. Cassandra's voice was low and venomous as she paced in her private chambers. During the hunt, stray arrows, simple, clean. Beatrice stood by the window, fists clenched. There would be no hunt if there were no wedding, Mother. Exactly. Cassandra stopped, turning to her daughter. There was something wild in her eyes now. Something desperate. So we cannot wait. We are out of time. What are you suggesting? That we do it today, tonight. Cassandra walked to a hidden drawer and pulled out a small vial. I have loyal guards, men who owe their lives to me, not to the king. Beatrice swallowed hard. You want them to. Intruders, Cassandra said coolly. Thieves broke into the palace. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time. A tragedy. Regrettable. She slipped the vial back into its hiding place. And tomorrow, when Aspen is shattered, you will be there to comfort him. And if he finds out? Cassandra looked at her daughter with a chill that could freeze anyone's blood. He will not. And if he does, it will already be too late. The girl will be dead. And the dead do not talk. Beatrice hesitated for only a heartbeat. Then she nodded. When? Tonight, as soon as she falls asleep. Cassandra smiled, but there was no humor in it. Only ruthless resolve. And tomorrow, finally, everything will be back where it belongs. Rosalie could barely eat at dinner. Sitting alone in her chambers, she stared at the tray Martha had brought. Everything smelled far too good, far too intense. Her stomach twisted at every scent. And there was something else. A feeling of danger. As if every instinct in her body were screaming that something was wrong. She walked to the window and looked down at the garden. The moon was rising, larger than the night before, brighter. And just by looking at it, Rosalie felt that familiar warmth in her chest. But tonight it was not painful. It was almost comforting. A soft knock at the door. Come in, Rosalie said. Martha stepped in, carrying a pitcher of fresh water. I came to see if you needed anything before bed. I am fine, thank you. Martha hesitated, then moved closer. May I say something, dear? Rosalie nodded. Be careful. There are tensions in the palace today, since the king's announcement. Martha lowered her voice. And tensions make desperate people do foolish things. It was a warning. Veiled, but unmistakable. Thank you, Martha. The older woman nodded and left, closing the door behind her. Rosalie stayed there for a long moment, her heart pounding. Martha knew something, or at least suspected. She looked at the bed. She should sleep, but every part of her screamed to stay alert, so she did not lie down. She simply sat in the chair by the window, watching the moon climb higher in the sky. The palace was quiet. Only the occasional whisper of wind slipping through empty corridors. Rosalie was almost drifting off in the chair when she heard it. Footsteps, soft, deliberate. Several of them. Her whole body snapped to attention. She stood slowly, eyes fixed on the door. The handle turned. Slowly. The door opened. 6 men walked in. Guards, judging by their armor. But their faces were covered, and their swords were already drawn. The leader stepped forward, cold eyes locked on her. Orders from the queen, he said, his voice flat. You were not supposed to stay. Rosalie took a step back. Aspen will know. He will. There will be nothing left to tell him. The guard cut in, moving toward her. The others followed, closing in. Rosalie looked around, desperate. The window was too high. The door was blocked. There was no way out. The first guard lunged, but something inside Rosalie reacted before she could think. She moved, fast, faster than she had any right to, slipping past the blade. Her hand seized his wrist, and she felt a strength she had never known. She twisted. The guard screamed, his sword clattering to the floor. Rosalie snatched it up before it could hit the stone. The others hesitated, stunned, but only for a second. Then they all attacked at once. Rosalie fought, blocked, struck back. The sword in her hands felt like an extension of her body, every motion instinctive, as if she had always known how to wield it. She took one down, then another. But there were 6, and no matter how strong she was, it was not enough. A blade tore into her arm. Another sliced her leg. Pain flared hot and sharp, and Rosalie stumbled. They closed in, and that was when she realized she could not win, not here, not like this. Rosalie looked at the open doorway behind the guards, and she made the only choice that made sense. She ran. She shoved past them, ignoring the hands that tried to grab her, and burst into the corridor. "After her," the leader shouted. Rosalie ran faster than she had ever run in her life, her bare feet pounding against the cold stone. Blood streamed from her wounds, leaving a trail, but she did not stop. More guards appeared ahead, blocking the path. Rosalie veered sharply, darting down a side corridor. She flew down staircases, crossed empty halls, guided by nothing but instinct, until she found a door that led to the gardens. She barreled through it, the night air hitting her face like a slap of ice. And then she sprinted for the forest beyond the walls. Branches clawed at her face. Roots tried to catch her feet, but she kept running. The blood from her wounds left a clear trail behind her, and she could hear them. She could hear everything, the footsteps crashing after her. Cassandra was not taking any chances. Rosalie stumbled, crashing to her knees. Pain exploded in her injured leg, and she had to bite down on her lip to keep from screaming. She dragged herself up, leaning against a tree. The moon shone through the canopy, enormous and silver, and just looking at it made the heat in her chest surge. It was no longer discomfort. It was something inside her wanting, demanding to be released. "There!" a voice shouted behind her. Rosalie forced her legs to move again, but she was losing blood too fast, getting dizzy. The world swam. She burst into a clearing and stopped dead. She was surrounded. Now there were 8 men, some in guard armor, others in hunting leathers, bows drawn and ready, all of them with weapons aimed at her. The leader, a big man with a scar slashing across his face, stepped forward. "It's over, girl," he said, almost sounding regretful. "Nothing personal, just orders." Rosalie backed up until she stood in the center of the clearing. There was nowhere to go, no way out. She looked up. The moon hung directly overhead now, massive and impossible to ignore, and the heat in her chest blew open into full fire. "Loose," the leader ordered. The archers drew their bows, and something inside Rosalie roared. It was not sound. It was feeling. Something primal, wild, that had slept for years and was finally waking in pure, unrestrained fury. The heat became fire. Her entire body burned. Rosalie dropped to her knees, screaming. But it was not only pain. It was transformation. Bones shattered, reformed. Her spine curved, lengthened. White fur burst from her skin. Hands became paws. Fingers became claws. And with the transformation came the memories, crashing over her like a wave, violent and unstoppable. A little girl running down marble corridors laughing. "Daddy! Daddy!" A tall, strong man with a golden crown catching her and spinning her around. "My little Rosalie, my princess. Will I be queen one day, like you're the king? One day, my love, and you will be the best queen this kingdom has ever seen." Years later. Dining hall. Long table. She is seated beside her father. A beautiful woman with dark hair and a red dress approaches. "My king, I brought a special wine. From the old cellar." Cassandra, the king's new wife, the stepmother. The king drinks, smiles. "Excellent choice, my dear." And then, coughing, his face going pale. Hands clutching his throat. "Father?" Rosalie rises, frightened. "Father!" He collapses from the chair. Blood drips from his nose, his mouth. Guards rush in, healers shout, and Cassandra watches with a cold, calculating expression. Satisfied. Days later. Funeral. Cassandra with the crown on her head. We all mourn the loss of our beloved king. Rosalie standing at the back of the hall, staring at that woman. Knowing. Somehow knowing. That night, running to Cassandra's chambers. "You killed him! I know you did!" Cassandra turning, not even bothering to deny it. "Smart, like your father. Unfortunately, just as inconvenient as he was." Calling the guards. "Take her." Rosalie fighting. "You can't. I am the heir. An old woman enters. Dark robes, empty eyes, sorceress. "You know what to do," Cassandra says coldly. The sorceress's hands glow. Strange words are whispered. Rosalie screams as something is ripped out of her. Memories, identity, everything. Darkness. Waking in a cabin. Head empty. Heart hollow. A grim man staring down at her. "Who am I?" "You're nobody." The memories stopped as abruptly as they had started. Rosalie was on all fours in the middle of the clearing, but they were not hands. They were paws. Huge paws, with claws that gleamed under the moonlight. She lifted her head and caught her reflection in a nearby pool of water. Wolf. Huge. White fur. Golden eyes burning with human intelligence. And power. So much power thrumming beneath her skin. The hunters were frozen, terrified. Rosalie, the wolf, growled. The sound rolled through the forest like thunder. "Fire!" the leader shouted, breaking the spell. Arrows flew. Rosalie moved, faster than she should have been able to. Faster than eyes could follow. She dodged the arrows, closed the distance in 3 leaps, and slammed into the first hunter before he had a chance to react. She did not kill him. She only took him down. The others tried to surround her, but she was too much. Too fast. Too strong. Instinct guiding every move. One by one they fell. When the last of them hit the ground unconscious, Rosalie stood in the center of the clearing, panting, her heart pounding. Then she lifted her muzzle to the moon and howled. The sound echoed through the forest, through the trees, through the palace walls, across distance and time, and it reached exactly who it needed to reach. Aspen woke as if struck by lightning. He shot upright in bed, one hand pressed to his chest where something tugged. It was not pain, it was connection, a bond, something he had felt in pieces ever since he met her, but that now roared into full, blazing life. "Rosalie," he whispered. And then he felt it. The danger. The fear. The transformation. The door burst open. Gideon strode in, his expression grim. "Your Majesty, there are bodies. Dead guards in Rosalie's chambers. And she is gone." Aspen was already on his feet, pulling on a tunic in haste. "She was attacked." "I can feel it," Aspen roared, and for the first time since he had gone blind, something changed. Blotches of light, blurred outlines, moving shadows. He blinked, stunned. "Gideon, I can see something." The warrior froze. "Your sight. It is coming back." Aspen walked to the window. He could make out shapes, rough forms, and beyond the walls the dark line of the forest. "She is out there." "I need to go." Another howl split the night, Closer now, clearer. And Aspen knew that sound. Knew it in the deepest, most primal part of himself. It was hers. "Gather men," he ordered, already heading for the door. "Now. Your Majesty, you cannot go like this." "It does not matter." Aspen stopped, turning toward Gideon, and even through the hazy vision, the warrior could see the absolute ferocity on his face. "She is mine, Gideon. My mate. My Luna. And if anyone has hurt her, I will burn this kingdom to the ground to find who is responsible." Gideon nodded, finally understanding the full extent of the bond. "Then let us bring her back." Rosalie was standing in the clearing, still in wolf form, when she heard footsteps approaching. She turned, growling, ready to fight again. But then she caught the scent. Leather, wood, spice, aspen. He stepped out from between the trees, Gideon beside him. And even through wolf eyes, Rosalie could see the change in him. He was looking, truly looking, not with perfect clarity, but with enough sight to pick out shapes, to see her. "Rosalie," he said, his voice rough. And then he saw her, really saw her. A massive white-furred she-wolf, surrounded by the unconscious bodies of hunters. Something inside Aspen erupted. It was not a choice. It was pure instinct. His wolf roaring at the sight of his mate injured, threatened, having fought alone. He dropped to his knees, crying out as the shift took him. "Your Majesty!" Gideon stepped forward, alarmed. But it was too late. Bones snapped, reformed. Aspen's body twisted, expanded. Fur as black as midnight spread over his skin, muscles reshaping into something far larger, far more powerful. And then, where the king had been, there was a wolf. Huge. Even bigger than Rosalie. Fur so black it seemed to swallow the moonlight. Eyes that now saw, bright silver, and fixed fully on her. Rosalie took a step back, startled. The black wolf moved forward, not aggressive, careful, as if approaching something precious that might shatter. When he reached her, he lowered his head and brushed his muzzle against hers, and the world exploded into light. Not light she could see, light she could feel, as if something that had been broken for 5 years finally snapped back into place. The bond. Rosalie felt everything from him, the rage at the threat to her, the crushing relief of finding her alive, the love, gods, so much love it made her chest ache, and he felt everything from her, the fear, the pain, the memories finally returning, the absolute certainty that he was hers just as much as she was his. They stayed like that for what felt like eternity. 2 wolves beneath the moon, finally united the way they had always been meant to be. Then Aspen stepped back, and the reverse shift began. Faster for him, after years of practice. In mere seconds he was kneeling on the ground, human again, breathing hard, and his vision was clear, perfectly clear. He lifted his head, and for the first time in 5 full years, he saw the world in sharp detail. The stars, the trees, and her. Rosalie, still in wolf form, watching him with those intelligent golden eyes. "Come back," he whispered. "Please, let me see you." Her shift was slower, but eventually she was kneeling on the forest floor, human, naked, and exhausted. Aspen stripped off his cloak at once, wrapping it tightly around her. Then he pulled her into his arms, holding her as if he would never let her go. "You are safe," he murmured into her hair. "You are safe now." Rosalie collapsed against him, every emotion she had been holding back finally breaking loose. "I remember," she sobbed. "I remember everything." Aspen held her tighter. Tell me all of it." And Rosalie told him. Between sobs and shivers, while Gideon stood guard and Aspen anchored her in his arms, she told him everything. My real name is Rosalie Thorne. From Dawnfell. Her voice cracked. I am the princess, the heir to the throne. Aspen went very still. My father, King Marcus Thorne. He was good. Just beloved. Tears streamed freely down her face now. And Cassandra poisoned him. I saw it all. Gods, Aspen breathed, his fingers tightening around her. She stole the throne. And when I confronted her, she brought in a sorceress, wiped my memories, and handed me over to Victor with orders to keep me drugged and hidden. Rosalie looked up, meeting his gaze, eyes that could finally, truly see her. The liquid he gave me every day, it was wolfsbane, to keep my wolf asleep, so I would never remember who I was. Aspen's face was carved in barely contained fury. How long? 5 years. The answer came out faint. He closed his eyes, his jaw clenching hard enough to hurt. My blindness started 5 years ago, at the exact same time. When he opened his eyes again, there was terrible understanding there. The elder said someone had taken something from me, and now I know what. He framed her face in his hands. You. She tried to take you from me. But why? How would she even know? Because we are soul bonded, Gideon said behind them, his voice low. When they both turned to look at him, the warrior went on. The old prophecies speak of it. Mates born under the same moon, bound before they even exist. When one finds the other, no power in this world can keep them apart. She knew, Rosalie whispered, the realization hitting. Somehow Cassandra knew about the prophecy. Knew I was your mate. That is why she tried to kill me. And when I somehow survived, she did the next best thing. She separated us. Blinded me so I could never find you. Aspen finished, his voice rough. Erased your memories so you would never know who you are. He pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. I thought you were dead. Everyone did. The Princess of Dawnfell died 5 years ago. That is what Cassandra announced. But you were alive. Trapped. Suffering. And you were blind. Alone. Rosalie's tears kept coming. She stole 5 years from us. But she failed. Aspen kissed her forehead. Then her eyelids. Then her lips, soft and reverent. Because we are here. Together. And Cassandra will pay for every second she took from us. He stood, helping Rosalie to her feet, keeping the cloak snug around her. Gideon, gather every loyal guard. Call the full council. Aspen's voice allowed no argument. By dawn, I want Cassandra and Beatrice in chains. And I want the sorceress found. The sorceress. Rosalie began, then hesitated. When I shifted, I saw something in the memories. She was sick, consumed, like the magic she used was killing her. Forbidden magic always has a price, Gideon said darkly. If she is still alive, it will not be for long. Then find her before she dies, Aspen ordered. I need her to confess everything before the council, in front of everyone. Gideon nodded and vanished into the trees. Aspen turned back to Rosalie, and for the first time, she saw tears in his eyes. I can see you, he said, his voice breaking. His fingers traced her face with worshipful care. And you are even more beautiful than I ever imagined. Rosalie cupped his face, smiling through her tears. And you are exactly as I remembered. You remembered me? Now I do. She closed her eyes, reaching for the newly returned memories. I was 5 years old. My father took me to a gathering of kings. You were there. All the elders whispered about us, about how we were born under the same moon, about destiny. Aspen went absolutely still. I remember too, a small girl with black hair and eyes that shone like gold. My wolf recognized you even then. But we were too young. They said we had time. but Cassandra did not want to give us time. Rosalie leaned into him, exhausted. She knew that if we united, we would be too powerful, that I would claim Dawnfell, that she would lose everything. And now she will. Aspen scooped her up despite her protest, ignoring them. But first, we take you home. Heal you. Prepare you. For what? He looked at her with an intensity that made her heart stutter. To claim what is yours, your throne, your kingdom, and your place at my side. Dawn painted the sky in blood red. Rosalie stood in the chambers Aspen had insisted she use, right beside his own, with loyal guards posted at every entrance. Martha had tended her wounds, spread salves that sped the healing, and dressed her in something worthy of who she truly was. A gown of deep midnight blue silk that fell to the floor. Long sleeves that hid the cut still knitting beneath the skin. Martha brushed her dark hair, leaving it loose over her shoulders. "You look like a queen," the older woman said softly, eyes shining with held-back tears. "Just like your mother." Rosalie froze. "You knew my mother?" Martha nodded. "I served in Dawnfell's palace before I came here. Your mother was luminous. And when I look at you now, I see her." A knock at the door cut the moment short. Aspen walked in, and Rosalie had to catch her breath. He wore full king's regalia, black tunic embroidered in silver, the heavy chain of office over his shoulders, a simple yet imposing crown resting on his head. And his eyes. His eyes drank her in with perfect clarity, tracing every detail as if he were committing her to memory. "Are you ready?" he asked. Rosalie nodded, even as her stomach churned with nerves. What is going to happen? Justice. The word was simple but heavy with promise. Cassandra and Beatrice are already in custody. The council is assembled, and... He hesitated. "We found the sorceress. Is she alive?" "Barely. Gideon says she has hours, maybe less." Aspen held out his hand. "But she is willing to confess. She knows she is dying, and she wants redemption, perhaps." Rosalie took his hand, and the strength in that touch grounded her. "Then let us finish this." The great hall was packed, not just the council, but nobles from all the realms under Aspen's rule. Guards lined the walls, and in the center, held between two warriors, stood Cassandra and Beatrice. Cassandra was still trying to keep her composure. Dawnfell's crown was gone. Gideon had taken it from her when she was arrested, but she kept her head high, her red gown flawless. Beatrice was visibly shaken. Red-rimmed eyes, hands trembling. Aspen entered from the opposite side, Rosalie at his side, and the entire hall fell silent. When they reached the throne, Aspen did not sit. He remained standing, Rosalie beside him, and looked out over the assembly with absolute authority. "We are gathered here today," his voice echoed off the stone walls, "to witness justice, to expose treason, to restore what was stolen." He turned to Cassandra. "Cassandra of Dawnfell, you stand accused of regicide, of usurpation, of attempted murder, of using forbidden magic, and of conspiring against the crown." A heavy pause. "How do you plead?" Cassandra lifted her chin, defiant. "These accusations are absurd." "Based on what?" "The word of some disturbed girl who appeared out of nowhere." "Based," Aspen said calmly, "on the word of a legitimate princess, and on the testimony of the one who carried out your orders." He gestured. The side doors opened, and two guards brought in a hunched, staggering figure. The sorceress. The entire hall gasped. The woman was ravaged, skin blackened like coal in some places, peeling in others, eyes milky and empty. Her whole body shaking with each step. They set her in the center, before everyone, and she fell to her knees. Her voice came out like dry leaves rustling. "I did terrible things." By order of Queen Cassandra. Cassandra went pale. Be quiet, old... Silence! Aspen's voice cracked like a whip. The sorceress went on, every word visibly costing her. 5 years ago, King Marcus Thorn of Dawnfell died. Not of natural causes, but of poison. She coughed, blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. Poison that Cassandra poured into his wine. I saw it. I was there. Murmurs exploded through the hall. And when young Princess Rosalie confronted her, Cassandra ordered me to erase her memories, to turn her into no one. The sorceress lifted her shaking hands. I used forbidden magic, to rip memories out of an innocent girl. Rosalie felt tears burn, but she did not let them fall. Not now. And that was not all, the sorceress continued, looking directly at Aspen. Cassandra knew about the prophecy. She knew Princess Rosalie and King Sovereign Aspen were soulmates, destined, born under the same red moon. The hall went utterly silent. She ordered me to make sure they never found each other. So I cursed the King Sovereign. Her voice cracked. I took his sight. I tried to blind not only his eyes, but his ability to find his mate through the bond. Aspen did not move, did not speak. He just watched her with that tightly controlled intensity that was more terrifying than any outburst. But ancient soulmates cannot be kept apart, the sorceress went on. The bond existed long before my magic. All I managed to do was delay it, 'cause pain. And now, she looked at her own hands as they began to crumble. The magic is consuming me, as it always does when used against destiny. That is a lie, Beatrice cried suddenly. My mother never... Your mother, the sorceress cut in, ordered you to seduce the king, to secure a political marriage before his true mate was found. She coughed up more blood. And when Princess Rosalie appeared alive, your mother panicked, ordered corrupt guards to kill the girl. But she failed, as she was always meant to fail. The sorceress began to fall apart, literally, pieces of her body turning to ash. I confess, she said, her voice fading. I confess to everything, and I accept the judgment of the gods. Forgive me for trying to rewrite the stars. And then she was gone. Nothing left but ashes on the marble floor. The silence was deafening. Cassandra was corpse pale, her lips trembling. Beatrice was sobbing openly. Aspen turned to the council. You heard, he said. You witnessed. Now decide. What is the verdict? The eldest of the council members stood, his voice grave and solemn. Cassandra of Dawnfell, you are guilty of all charges. Regicide, usurpation, attempted murder, use of forbidden magic against the sovereign crown. A pause. The sentence is death. Cassandra finally broke. No! I did what needed to be done. That throne was mine. Marcus was weak. Rosalie was spoiled. I deserved to rule. You, Rosalie said, her voice cutting through the hall for the first time, killed my father, stole my childhood, turned me into a prisoner, and tried to destroy the man meant for me. She stepped forward. You never deserved anything but what you are getting. Cassandra glared at her with pure hatred. And then, suddenly, she pulled a hidden dagger. If I cannot have the throne, she screamed, lunging at Rosalie. You will not have it either. Everything happened in seconds. Aspen moved, stepping in. But Rosalie reacted too. Her eyes flashed gold. Claws burst from her hands, a partial shift. And when Cassandra reached her, Rosalie disarmed her with one smooth motion, throwing her to the ground. Guards rushed in, pinning Cassandra before she could get up. Take her away, Aspen ordered, his voice ice cold. The sentence will be carried out at sunset. Cassandra was dragged off, shrieking and fighting. Aspen turned to Beatrice, who stood frozen in terror. And you, he said. You knew. You were part of it. You tried to marry me knowing I had a destined mate. I only obeyed my mother, Beatrice sobbed. Obedience is not an excuse for complicity. Aspen looked back at the council. What is the verdict? Exile, the elder pronounced after a brief deliberation. Beatrice Thornwell will be stripped of all titles, lands, and privileges, banished from all realms under the crown's rule. Should she return, the sentence will be death. Beatrice collapsed in tears, but did not argue. She knew it could have been worse. When she was led away, the hall finally seemed to breathe again. Aspen turned to Rosalie, taking her hand. There is one more matter, he said, facing the assembly once more. Rosalie Thorne is the rightful heir of Dawnfell, and today, before you all, I restore her rights, her title, her kingdom. He signaled, and Gideon brought forward something covered in red cloth, the crown of Dawnfell. Aspen took it, cradling it with reverence, and turned to Rosalie. Rosalie Thorne, he said, his voice formal but thick with emotion. Rightful princess of Dawnfell, daughter of Marcus Thorne. Do you accept what is yours by blood and destiny? Rosalie looked at the crown, at the full hall of witnesses, at Aspen, who looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in existence. I accept, she said, her voice steady. Aspen set the crown upon her head, and for the first time in 5 years, Dawnfell had its true queen back. The hall erupted in applause, but Aspen was not finished. He dropped to one knee before her, and the entire hall fell silent again, stunned. The sovereign king. Kneeling. Rosalie Thorne of Dawnfell, he said, gazing up at her. You are my mate, my soulmate, destined by the stars and the moon. A pause. Do you accept to be my Luna, my companion, my queen at my side? Tears finally slipped from Rosalie's eyes. Yes, she whispered. Aspen rose, pulling her into his arms and kissing her in front of everyone. And when they finally parted, the entire hall was standing, clapping, cheering. Because at last, after 5 years of darkness and pain, destiny had won. 3 days later, under the full moon, the ritual took place. Not in the great hall crowded with nobles and politics, but in the garden where everything had begun. Just the two of them, Gideon as witness, and the moon as their blessing. Rosalie wore a simple white silk dress, Aspen a black tunic, no crowns, no pomp, just two mates finally joining as one. Rosalie, Aspen said, holding her hands, do you accept my mark, my claim? Do you accept me as your partner until death and beyond? I do, she whispered. He tilted her neck, baring the soft skin where shoulder met throat. Then he shifted partially, just enough for his fangs to emerge. And he bit. Rosalie gasped, not from pain, but from something far more intense. The bond roared into full flame, tying them together at a level beyond the physical. She felt everything from him. He felt everything from her. When Aspen pulled back, the mark was there. Permanent. Beautiful. Silver against her skin. Mine, he murmured, kissing the mark. Yours, she answered, pulling him into a deep kiss. And in that moment, the last shadow of the curse vanished completely. Aspen's vision, already clear, sharpened into perfection. Rosalie's wolf roared in pure contentment. Finally whole. 6 months later, Rosalie sat on the same stone bench in the garden, watching the stars. So much had changed. She ruled Dawnfell at Aspen's side, while he remained sovereign king over all the realms. Together, they had brought justice, peace, prosperity. Victor had been found and judged, the cabin destroyed, and Dawnfell thrived again under its true queen. But in that moment, in that garden, she was just Rosalie, and he was just Aspen. What are you thinking about? He asked, sitting beside her. The moon, she said. For years it brought me nothing but pain, fear. I hated full moon nights. And now? Rosalie smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. Now I know it was only guiding me, bringing me home. Aspen kissed her forehead, his hand finding hers, fingers lacing together. Welcome home, my Luna, he murmured, and under the silver light, they sat there, whole, together, exactly as they had always been meant to be.